Welcome back to the Lumios Post, where we talk about all things Pokemon, and today we're going to be talking about Hisui and Sinjoh and Kitakami, but all of those actually are way more related than you may think. So basically the theory is, in its finest form, that Kitakami is the modern day version of Sinjoh, in the sense that it is literally Sinjoh just today, in the present day. Now, this is a theory that I've had ever since the very first trailer for the DLC, when people were kind of piecing together some stuff about Kitakami, and it's one that a lot of you have too. I recently did a video where I talked about your DLC predictions and theories, and there were people that predicted this as well. This is a very prevalent theory, and I wanted to revisit it because we actually, believe it or not, have gotten some kind of details within the data of Scarlet and Violet that could back this up. So, first off, let's start at the very basics of where this theory was founded in. So, the Tohoku region of Japan is what this all revolves around, and that's a real-world region, not a Pokemon region, just so we're clear. So, the Tohoku region is right below Hokkaido. Hokkaido is the real-world version of Sinnoh. Sinnoh is based off of the Hokkaido region. Now, it seems by Kitakami, based off of just a few details, we're able to piece together that it could be based off of the Tohoku region of Japan. Well, we also know that Sinjoh in the games is a region in between Sinnoh and Johto, and it did exist back in the time of Legends Arceus during Hisui. It did exist then because we have letters referencing Sinjoh. So again, it's always been right there though between Hisui / Sinnoh and Johto. This would imply that Sinjoh is based off of the real-world Japanese region of Tohoku. So already we're seeing similarities with Sinjoh and Kitakami, and that they are literally both based off the same place. We also have a few details in the game that we know. We don't know much about the Sinjoh region. In fact, what little we do know is just from, like, pieces of letters in Legends Arceus, and then us actually being able to visit the Sinjoh ruins in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. But we do know that Sinjoh seems to be a mountainous area. We know this because the ruins are very snowy and also seem to be like kind of located in a mountain, like nestled in, you know, you've got like a canyon you're walking through almost, all kinds of things that suggest that there are mountains in Sinjoh. Well, then we do also know that Kitakami is nestled, or it's a region where a village is nestled under a mountain, and that's the village that we'll be visiting. Perhaps the Sinjoh ruins are located in this mountain they're nestled under. Now again, this is a weaker piece of evidence because, you know, mountains kind of exist everywhere, but when you combine this with the other pieces of evidence, it does altogether build a really strong case, in my opinion. Now, another detail, and possibly the strongest detail, is that Kitakami actually writes in the same language as Hisui. We see in the trailer for the Teal Mask DLC that there is this sign in the woods depicting this hero trainer chasing off Ogerpon, along with the new hero Pokemon. And this writing may look very familiar to you, and that's because you saw it before in Hisui. You can see here on this Cleavor flag for when you go to the Noble Arena of the Noble Cleavor. There's this writing is the same language as Hisui, and this is important because Pokemon doesn't always do this. If you look at the language in Paldea, it is not this language. So this is different. This is interesting that they would pick to do a different language but decide to do it the same as Hisui's. That's just, I feel like that's the biggest piece of evidence for this. Now, another thing to note on this whole language thing is that we know that the Sinjohan people did migrate to Hisui, some of them at least. Now, it's very possible that the Sinjohan people may have migrated over to Hisui and brought this language with them. So it stuck around in Kitakami because, you know, Sinjoh over time became Kitakami and they just kept using the Sinjoh alphabet. But the Sinjoh people that moved to Hisui brought this language with them, and that's how Hisui got the alphabet we have in Hisui. This Hisuian alphabet is actually just a Sinjohan alphabet. Furthermore, we also do know that the Celestica people are a very ancient people in Hisui, and there's a lot of evidence to believe that they could be from Sinjoh initially, because if you look at the Sinjoh ruins, the architecture and the themes and the focus on primordial chaos all seem to suggest that this is built by the same people who built these similar ruins in the Sinnoh or Hisui region. So it's likely that the Celestial people were from Sinjoh, then they moved to Hisui, brought this language with them, as well as this focus on Arceus, Giratina, Dialga, and Palkia, and also this focus on this language, this architecture rather, this style, if you will, of ruins. And they brought this there, built their temples that would later be known as ruins, and that's why Spear Pillar, for example, looks so much similar to the Sinjoh ruins. Now, another looser piece of evidence, again, we're just going to get everything we have in here, even the weaker things, is that we do know there's a focus on masks in both kind of areas. You know, the Hisui region has masks that you can buy, specifically a Zoroark mask, which is apparently so important to the region that they even kind of based a whole short around just that theming and had a Zoroark mask short web series called Hisui and Snow. And then in Kitakami, we do have the Teal Mask is the name of that DLC, and there seems to be a festival with masks celebrating the initial fight against Ogerpon with these hero Pokemon, with masks of Pikachu, Eevee, the hero Pokemon, Ogerpon. So all of this, again, combined with the other stuff, could suggest that maybe Sinjoh had a big focus on masks, and that kind of tradition existed there. It was then brought into Hisui when, again, the Celestica people moved there and brought their language, architecture, and religion there. But yeah, that's, again, weaker argument. Now, another thing is, this would be a great explainer on how to get Hisui Pokemon. So, the interesting thing about Hisui Pokemon is that they are Hisui Pokemon, right? It's a region that doesn't exist, and we've seen Hisui in the present day, the Sinnoh region, and these Hisuian forms don't exist there anymore. And in fact, not only do they not exist there, but it seems that they couldn't exist there anymore, because if I have a Quilava in Hisui, and it evolves into Typhlosion, it's going to be Hisuian Typhlosion. However, in the present day Hisui, Sinnoh, if I evolve my Quilava, it evolves into a regular Jotonian Typhlosion. So, the question here is, how will we get these Hisui forms? Because Game Freak isn't going to want these Hisui forms to be locked to a region for all this time. Now, you may say, regional variants have always been locked to a region. And that's actually not really true. So, we see that other regions' Pokemon will be their regional forms, their exclusive Pokemon, if you will be traded in other games. For example, in Sword and Shield, the Isle of Armor specifically, you can find trainers that will trade you, say, a Cantonian Weezing for a Galarian Weezing, or an Alolan Vulpix for a Cantonian Vulpix, etc., etc. So, you can't really do that with Hisui Pokemon, because they're lost to time. So suddenly this random trade NPC becomes a major character, because it's like, whoa, how do they have access to Hisui Pokemon? But if you put the Hisui Pokemon in Kitakami, and they just happen to live there now because it's been a little more untouched and it's Sinjoh right there below Hisui, then that's a great explainer for it. And just in future games, when we get people who will be willing to trade you Hisui Pokemon, it makes sense, because they're just, you know, probably from the Kitakami region. Just like how we assume people who trade us Alolan Vulpix are probably from the Alolan region. There would be no questions of, is this person a time travel? Is this person a god? None of that. It's all easily explained, and now Game Freak will be able to trade those Pokemon freely. This is even further backed up in the data mine of Scarlet and Violet. So one thing that's really interesting is that Stantler, Ursaring, and Scyther do not evolve in Scarlet and Violet. Well, Scyther can into Scizor, but it can't evolve into Cleavor. So the reason this is because you're not in Hisui. These were Hisuian evolutions. Ursaring could only evolve into Ursaluna under the conditions that Hisui provided. Yet, interestingly enough, they are still coded in Scarlet and Violet to be able to evolve. And an Eviolite, an item that works, that boosts the stats of Pokemon that are unevolved, works on Stantler, Ursaring, and Scyther too, but again, Scyther was always unevolved since Gen 2, so that point doesn't really matter. But the data for these Pokemon being able to evolve, even though they can't evolve in the game, could suggest that there's plans to be able to evolve these Pokemon in DLC. Again, in the Kitakami region, because they can easily just explain Kitakami is the former Sinjoh, and it's so untouched and so traditional that these Hisui Pokemon exist here, and also these Pokemon that can evolve into Hisui Pokemon can also evolve here. It's just the easiest way to explain it. Furthermore, if you look ever since the update we got in February, there has been scrapped dex entries in Scarlet and Violet. And what this means is that there were dex entries for Pokemon, but they scrubbed it, and it's likely being saved for DLC. The same thing happened when Pokemon released Isle of Armor. We were able to see scrapped dex entries for returning Pokemon in the Crown Tundra. So we were able to know the second Isle of Armor dropped, all the Pokemon that will be coming in Crown Tundra. And it looks like they've made the same mistake here and have given us a list of a little over 220 Pokemon that can that have these scrap dex entries, so seemingly suggesting they will be brought back in the Teal Mask and the Indigo Disc DLC. I wanted to say the Crown Tundra DLC, but that's so last gen. Now, interestingly enough, in these scrap dex entries are Hisui Pokemon. Weirdeer, Ursaluna, all these Pokemon are in these scrap dex entries, which, if that's implying that these Pokemon are getting dex entries, then that implies they're part of a region's dex, which implies they're a part of either Kitakami's dex or the Blueberry Academy or wherever that's located's dex. And I'd say they certainly fit the theming of Kitakami a lot more. Now, I guess you could make the argument that Blueberry Academy being this prestigious school, perhaps they found a way to recreate the environmental needs for Pokemon to be able to evolve into these seemingly lost to time evolutions. But I think it's much more likely that they'd stick to Kitakami with all these other points in mind. Now, another really interesting thing to point out here is that Game Freak kept Sinjoh relevant. Sinjoh was first introduced in Gen 4 in that Heart Gold Soul Silver event where you could go to the Sinjoh ruins, and it had not been referenced since until Hisui brought it back up and mentioned Sinjoh. This didn't have to be done. Sinjoh's not mentioned in the Sinnoh region, in Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, or Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, but they wanted to bring it back up in Hisui. They wanted to keep Sinjoh relevant, and we know that Game Freak has recently taken an approach to where they like to get rid of the stuff they want us to forget about. You know, I mean, when's the last time you saw Notch Deer Pichu? When's the last time you saw a cosplay Pikachu? Frankly, when's the last time we saw Ash Greninja? In fact, they've done a whole retcon with Ash Greninja. So, the fact that they're keeping Sinjoh relevant is interesting, and I think it's more than just a little gift to the fans because it's a lovely piece of lore that we all adore. I think it could be Game Freak hinting. We know that Game Freak loves to hint at future generations in their game. They've been doing this since, I mean, one could argue since the very beginning, because people say that Mythicals may hint at the next gen, but they have been doing this in full force ever since Gen 6 for sure. Well, maybe Legends Arceus referencing Sinjoh could have been them hinting at us being able to go to Sinjoh. And if you even think about when we were playing through Legends Arceus, people thought, because of this whole Sinjoh thing, we were going to get Sinjoh DLC. And there was even a leak that said we were going to get some kind of update to Legends Arceus and like some extra features and stuff. And a lot of people jumped the gun and went, oh, I bet we're going to Sinjoh. And then it turns out that it was just the Daybreak DLC, if you can even really call it that, that we got. So it wasn't Sinjoh, but maybe Game Freak was wanting us to think we're going to Sinjoh, because we were going to Sinjoh just a year and a half later. Okay, so now with all that in mind, let's go ahead and just pretend for a moment this is 100% true and Kitakami is Sinjoh. What exactly will this look like? Well, what this would mean is that Sinjoh is to Kitakami what Hisui is to Sinnoh. This is just an old name for the region. Now, the Sinjoh ruins, perhaps the reason that this is a thing is not because these ruins are located in Sinjoh, but because they are ruins left behind from the Sinjoh people. So they're called the Sinjoh ruins after the people that made those ruins, you know what I mean? Or even just because they are ruins from the days of Sinjoh. Before we in the Kitakami region were Kitakami, we were Sinjoh, and these are ruins from that time where we were that. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think it'll be really cool to see maybe why Sinjoh became Kitakami. I think that would be a really fun explainer. This also opens the door for many other things. You know, people want Hisui Pokeballs back. Maybe there will be something about being able to craft your own Pokeballs, or even give them to a craftsman, give items to a craftsman for him to craft them in the DLC, and this would allow you to maybe get access to Hisui Pokeballs, but more likely it would just be a way for you to get more Apricorn Balls. Either way, though, I think that would be really, really cool, just to dive into that focus on craftsmanship and really reference Legends Arceus. I think Legends Arceus will get a lot of referencing in Kitakami. I think in a lot of ways, the Teal Mask will almost be like a sequel to Legends Arceus. The DLC we always wanted but never got. There is also this ominous line in Legends Arceus from Laventon where he says that he doesn't believe this is the last time we have seen Volo. Well, maybe he'll pop up in Kitakami. We know time travel shenanigans are going on in Scarlet and Violet, so maybe Volo will take advantage of that. Or maybe he'll just kind of still be there in Legacy, if you will. But yeah, the implications of this are insane. I'd love to see Volo return, but I'd even be fine with seeing Cynthia return and referencing her ancestors, Volo, and the other lady that I feel terrible that I've forgotten, but she's on screen. All of that said, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you think Kitakami is indeed the modern-day version of Sinjoh? Also, if you do think that, what would you want to see from Kitakami? You know, legends, forms existing there, crafts, stuff like being able to craft your own Pokeballs and maybe even supplies, all that fun stuff. Let me know in the comments below. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss all our future videos. You know that if we find out that Kitakami is Sinjoh, or even if we don't, we'll be talking about it here and talking about all the stuff that comes with this DLC. And until next time, I'll see all of you later.